to the Growth Whisperers, where everything that we talk about is building enduring great companies. What do you need to do? How do you do it? Why does it matter? And how do you get there? My name is Brad Giles, and as always, I'm joined today by my co-host, Kevin Lawrence in Vancouver, Canada. Kevin, good morning, good afternoon. How are you doing today?
Good evening. I'm doing great. Life's good. I'm looking forward to our conversation today because we're contemplating if we did a massive acquisition. There's this company, I don't know if you've heard about it, but it's called Twitter. And I heard it was for sale. Well, or at least someone decided to buy it. So we're digging into if we bought Twitter today. I think it's going to be fun. We had some fun thinking about this. Yeah, so good things are good.
Awesome. I think you said today, and I know that we shouldn't really be talking about the weather. You had 1 foot of snow. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm up near a place called Kelowna, BC. Yeah, last couple of days. It's serious. Yeah, and it makes it real fun when I'm driving back to Vancouver in a couple of days over the mountain pass, which always makes for a thrilling time. So yeah,
awesome.
Lots of snow. It's fun. It was lots of ice in town. I was in town for breakfast this morning, a charity event thing, and there was ice all over the place, and it was quite fun. Welcome to Canada.
Your idea of fun might be different to mine. All right, so
I'm equipped. I got all the right equipment, so it does make it more fun. I'm not worried about it. Anyway, go ahead.
All right, so let's talk about this episode. What we're asking today is, we've seen Elon Musk buy Twitter recently, and he's made headlines. Look, it's the richest man in the world buying basically one of the most successful, I guess, social media town square. Okay, so it's where all the journalists go, all the celebrities to tweet their thoughts or to communicate their thoughts. And, you know, it has an impact on the world. But we can't undervalue Elon Musk. Like, he didn't get to be the richest man in the world with Tesla, with PayPal, with SpaceX, with the Boring Company, with all of his amazing ventures. And I probably missed one, or two, without being, if he was a dummy, without being, brilliant at business. But, in the interests of entertainment, we thought, let's reflect on that first of all, and then maybe position that into things to consider if you're acquiring a business.
Yeah, and I guess, an acquisition like that, he's got to have a pretty damn good plan. He's not just wanting to invest that kind of money on a hope and a prayer. I would imagine not. He's a smart guy. He's surrounded by very, very smart people. And that's what we're kind of digging into today. And, the distinction to kind of look at this is that really, when you're doing an acquisition like that, there's kind of 3 different modes, right? Is just buy it and hold it and let it run. That's not likely that isn't what he's doing so far. Not because he saw extra value in it. The second is when you do see extra value in it, it could be just to do a healthy renovation, update it, facelift it, make it better, and away you go, which people often do with acquisitions, improving it, streamlining it, whatever it happens to be. And then there's like the knockdown, tear down, full-blown turnaround, right? Where it's a hardcore resetting a business model, gutting out all kinds of things out of it, like literally like fully tearing it down. And, I love this metaphor when we're talking about acquisitions with clients, and I talk about it, it's about buying your grandma's house. And it's like when you go and buy your grandma's house, no matter what, there's always good there, no matter what you're buying. Otherwise, you wouldn't buy it. Yeah. So is it a buy and hold? Is it a light reno that you do on grandma's house, keeping all the heritage there, and you keep some of the old wood paneling and wood floors and preserve it? Or is it a full hardcore knockdown or fully gut it, like a full-blown turnaround to modernize the whole thing, right? They're very different things. And the root of it is you need to respect what's there, but then find the things that you have to change to create the extra value. And that's, in this case, he seems, from everything that we're seeing, to be closer to the hardcore reno, almost to the point of full turnaround in his approach so far.
So if you bought Twitter, you
Yep.
know, well, what would you do?
Mm-hmm. Well, I definitely surround myself with some really smart people,
Yeah.
and I'd be doing a hell of a lot of brainstorming on the strategy and the economic model. Like at
Yeah.
the end of the day, how are we going to take this great asset and find a way to economically convert it into something that can produce a lot of cash? Right? It's dominant in its space, but just like Facebook did, and find a way to really bring the economic model. I'm not saying we do the same things, but like they did with Facebook, to find a way to bring the economic model to life. Like in the news recently, he was, from they started selling the verification marks. Was it $4 a month or something like that, or five
Yeah.
bucks a month, or
Eight
$7 a month?
dollars.
Yeah, something like that. A few bucks a
Yeah.
month.
There's some tactical stuff that is under heavy debate. But I guess if you zoom out and you think about like their hedgehog, so their hedgehog being what's their core purpose? Like to be the world's town square or something like that, to be the
Mm-hmm.
place where people can have healthy debate to move
Yeah,
mankind forward, right? And I say healthy because it's a toxic cesspool at times. In fact, most times,
sure.
and
Most
that's
most of those platforms can be the social
they
platforms. Yes.
can be, right? So to be able to live the purpose, okay, to be able to understand what they can be best at, which obviously is deeply connected to that purpose. Like they have
Mm-hmm.
been the best at that, right? But the challenge is the economic model, as you said. That's the bit of the hedgehog that they've got to get right. They've got
Yeah.
to get their profit per X right in a way that um adds to the user experience and that people are willing to pay for, be it advertisers or people, whoever it is. So you got to get that right because I saw him say recently he was losing $4 million a day. You can't keep doing that for too long, even if you are the richest man on the planet.
No, and it doesn't make sense. It's a business, and unless there's a way to, because the goal is always of a CEO is to improve or increase the enterprise value. So if there's another lever he can pull, I don't know how many more users are available for Twitter. So user growth is probably not it. People that use Twitter.
Yeah.
So could they get more eyeballs spending more time potentially? But at some point, you have a platform like it's leveraging the revenue streams out of it. And
Mm.
and there's lots of other things. So yeah, for me, it would be the economic models. I would be studying lots of different options that other people have done. And that's where all of the energy would be, is figuring out the economic model. Because look, you from that, you're going to honor the purpose and what it's about. You can figure out the people afterwards. In that process, I wouldn't be thinking about human beings at all. It's purely hard, cold capitalism connected to the purpose. Because if you think about the existing team, you're going to be limited. And in many ways, I might not even be using a bunch of the existing team. I would take some, I would cherry pick some, but I'd be using a lot of my smartest friends and advisors around me to really dig in, figure it out. And like any strong team would do, is that have the finance people there with us grinding numbers as we're brainstorming, trying to find ways to see what would work. And I would, in my case, there's probably, I can think of 6 people around the world that I would pull in from different countries that I know, and ideally get ourselves in a room for a couple of days and come up with a whole bunch of things that we would start to test and iterate.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, that's what he's done. He's brought in a heap of people from Tesla and so forth. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I mean, I'd say it's maybe a combination of a renovation and a knockdown turnaround. Like there's a little bit of each.
Yeah.
There's some bits that are working really well. There's some bits that
Yes.
they need to improve, but they're coming back to this has to be a successful business. It can be really good for mankind overall, and I say the word mankind because he uses that language a lot.
Yeah.
He does, to
Yep.
save mankind by setting up on Mars, like all of those types of things, which is fabulous. It's great to have people who care.
Yeah. So this reminds me of, and we were chatting before the show about this, Brad, but of the turnaround of Etsy.
Yeah,
Because there's a great Harvard Business School case study. We've used it with some of our clients as a case study. Even our internal team, we did it. It's an awesome case. But the root of it is, Etsy was coming up in the world with their handmade goods and almost like the craft fair for the world. And it was excellent. And at a certain point, though, the founder or the CEO of this building, I forget whether he was the founder or not, but it became kind of like a little Woodstockish, a whole bunch of loving and freedom and all this other stuff. And people were chasing the company's purpose. People were chasing their own purpose. Everyone had a lot of autonomy going off in different directions, but economically it wasn't working that good. So they were kind of Woodstock trying to be commercial, but it sort of was a little more like Woodstock in the best ways. And the new CEO came in, and it was pretty damn controversial. Like, he made changes, and a lot of people were very unhappy because although he honored the initial purpose, right, like renovating ground, he changed it fairly. He made it a little more commercial because it needed to be in his eyes. And they realigned the strategy, realigned who the core customer was. Interestingly, they changed the core customer. And then they updated the strategy, made notable cuts on the team, and killed a lot of the programs that weren't directly related to the strategy. So they really it's like taking that bush in grandma's front yard and pruning it dramatically, like really cutting it way, way back to the point where it might take a couple years to grow back and be strong. So huge pain. And it made a massive difference once they got past all of the protests and the upset people and, you've destroyed our company stuff. It was a hardcore renovation, and they did a great job. So, seems that
the problem is that eventually you run out of other people's money.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why we go back to, at the base, the hedgehog. Like, you've got to be living your purpose. You've got to be in the wheelhouse of what you can be the best at, and you've got to get your economic model right.
Right. But if you don't have all that other stuff is fine, but without the economic model, it doesn't work. And unfortunately, in our world, there's been a lot of companies that could get away with, especially in tech spaces, of not making money, of just using other people's money to build this machine with the intent of making money one day, someday in the future.
And that's like WeWork. I don't know if you've seen, there's a Netflix series about We Crashed, about WeWork. It's the same thing. Eventually they were 100% about the purpose and elevating consciousness until they run out of someone else's money, and then it all kind of became a bit of an issue. So I can remember a client acquired a business, and we spent a lot of time on the culture. Okay, because the problem is that if you're bringing this was a merger, I suppose, merger acquisition, rather than simply a new owner, which is the Twitter example, right? But if you look at the changes that have been made, a lot of the changes have been to realign the culture along with Elon Musk's other values. But if for you, coming back to mere mortals like us, if you're looking to acquire a business or you've acquired a business, you can't underestimate the integration of the two cultures and just how much of a problem that can be unless you spend enough time to get it right.
It's a huge amount of work.
Yeah.
We have one client we worked with, and they were doing, at that time, a couple $100 million. And we acquired the number 2 competitor in the space, who was doing, I think, 20-ish million of revenue, roughly, ballpark numbers. And we acquired them. They were actually relieved, which was wonderful, because we were just destroying them in the market. I mean, we built a machine. We had such a strong team, incredible clear strategy and execution, spectacular team of A players. The team was getting stronger all the time. We were hardcore on only bringing on high quality talent and assessing talent. Anyway, outstanding. And the financial performance is great. But we acquired this company, and it was an acquisition. We were rolling them into the business. But the amount of work we did into doing it properly, like, I will tell you, like, everyone was working their brains out and exhausted.
Yeah.
We buy the business, we get the diligence done, get the capital, away we go. We went in and spent a ton of time getting to know who the key people were in the team, bringing them into our fold. We had a list of the people that we for sure wanted to keep. We knew that these were the 10 most important people. And then our executive team paired up with them. And I remember very clearly, we're in a strat planning meeting on this acquisition. And, we're making it happen. We know who the key people are. We're integrating them. We spent time to emotionally bond them with our people. We did all the right things. Then we started working on the systems. But then someone's like, we're all exhausted. We need to take a breath. And the CEO and I were discussing, we're saying, next quarter. This quarter, we got work to do. And I'm sorry, we're going to have to pull up our socks, and we're going to have to find ways to dig down for our own resilience, because we just acquired a bunch of customers, and they are all signed up for the number 2 in the market and not number 1. And they were selling against number 1. Like, we're the bad guys. We got to get in the market. We got to go talk to all of the customers and make sure that the new ones stay. We also got to talk to our existing customers and make sure that they're happy and we don't lose any customers in the So the point of it being is, the engineering to do the acquisition was one, then to do the initial integration strategy, then to do the integration of the people, of the customers, never mind the systems. The systems was just administrative stuff.
Yeah.
But we had to integrate the value of the organization and then leverage it, because we had a plan to increase the value. So it's a lot of work, and it's exhausting work getting it done. And then once you're done the planning, then you got to do all the work.
Yeah.
And again, it worked out incredibly well, but the amount of work that team put into it was impressive. And we know the other ones were when people do an acquisition and where people don't properly approach it. And generally, most people don't. People buy acquisitions with a theory of the efficiencies and the lift, which rarely is seen, because it's incredibly hard work. And sometimes they just don't integrate that well, especially if the cultures are too different or things like that.
And that's where you need to make the hard choices. Elon Musk, you may or may not know, sent out to managers a list of people or managers, they're making cuts. I think they might have cut like 50% of their workforce. Okay. So
substantial. Yeah.
Yeah. It was substantial. And so he was basically saying to the managers, who are the people that are going to succeed in this new company? And you need to make the decision as to who your team will be accountable for. Now, perhaps the way that he did it might not be your way, but that's his choice, right? But still, there are hard choices, because if you can see, it's like when we're talking about A players in other parts of the podcast, you need to give the new business under the new purpose and the new values and the new ideologies of the new leader the best chance of success. And if there are people who are not going to succeed in that area, or are going to be kind of against that or toxic in that environment, the quicker that you can release those people from the business, the better. And like you said earlier, surround yourself with people who are living the same values as you, who are aligned with the new purpose. And they, they need to align with that. There's simply, they can fight it, but it's not going to go away.
Correct. So if we go back to what we talked about at the beginning, if you're buying grandma's house, you can hold it and live in it or rent it out as an Airbnb or something. You can do a light reno, or you can do the knockdown turnaround. And in our beautiful fantasy world, it's wonderful to think that most of these businesses are wonderful and you can buy them and hold them, but it's often not the case. There's a reason why they're for sale. And it's not usually because they're running at their absolute prime and they're a perfect business, right? Used cars are often used for a reason. Now, sometimes the owners have other motivations and they need the capital for something else. But generally, and this is where people go wrong with it, you got to be willing to make a lot of very tough decisions that will make a lot of people very unhappy and create risk. And you got to have the courage to go and take those risks. And a lot of people aren't cut for that, or they don't want to be disruptive, or whatever it happens to be. And it's also being smart about knowing and have the discernment to know what works and what doesn't. So, it's interesting. A client bought, I've had a couple clients, the number of actually have bought underperforming businesses. Buying underperforming businesses is really tricky because if the previous owners couldn't make it work, what makes you think you can? And, if you're doing it, you got to be like Musk and be pretty aggressive to turn it around. I mean, one tried. It was in another country and another continent, and they tried remotely. And it was, I had a fight with the CEO. Like, I rarely have, well, the CEO have quite a few fights, but I often don't fight with CEOs, but this one almost needs to fight to get clarity. And we had a big fight about it. I'm like, yeah, I know you're only buying it for a few million.
Yeah.
You're going to burn 10 or more. I guarantee it. No, not a chance. And this is not Kevin's right, but they burnt more than 10 million. And they got, it was hard and it was a great learning experience. And they got one thing out of it that was of some value. It was next to impossible to be able, everything that could, never mind it was underperforming and not profitable and in a different country and in a horrible country to do business in. And there's a whole bunch of, and again, you got to do it. Like there's a learning that's required in some acquisitions, but you got another client who had a system. They would buy solid businesses or even underperforming businesses, but they were buying they knew what they were buying.
Yeah.
They were buying customer lists, geographic talent, and other things. So if the business was underperforming, it didn't matter. They would look at the business. They had built the P&L they know they could turn it into because they had done it many, many times before. It was like cookie cutter. And they would buy it, implement a few notable changes, get a notable lift. And if they'd buy it for 5 times earnings, by the time they were done, they were buying it for equivalent of 1.5 times earnings. And it worked incredibly well, time and time. But they had a system. And that's the thing with doing this. Experience helps. Go ahead, Brad.
The thing that you've left hanging there is how did they lose the 10 million? Was it through, in that story, was it through losses? Like they just sustained losses? Was it they lost customers? What was it that caused the losses? Do you remember?
Yeah, very clearly. Well, there was the initial price was part of that 10 million, but it was I forget the number. It was pretty low.
Yeah.
It was the monthly and annual investment in a loss-making business.
Right.
And it was like a boat was sunk on the bottom of the ocean and they thought they were going to get it to float again. And they spent a lot of money trying to pull the boat up from, like, pulling up the Titanic from the bottom, and they couldn't. Yeah, sure, it's valuable if you get it up. They just couldn't get the damn thing off the bottom ocean floor. They couldn't ramp sales, and they couldn't find a way to get it to a profitable position. And they spent their money. And again, I love these people. They're great people. They tried, but taking a loss-making business and turning it around is a big, bold move. So a couple things that, I made a list of your questions, Brad, that, you and I would ask if we would have as a client, and then we'll wrap up here. But, is this a buy it and let it run? Is it an optimize or a mild reno, or is it a knockdown turnaround, right? And if so, you better make damn sure you've got that experience on your team to do it.
Yeah.
Clarifying who is the core customer, who should it be? What is the strategy to win? Blank slate, taking with what we have. What's the business model we got to use? Who is the team that we want to run with? And often cases, the team that's in the old model, if you make massive changes, they're attached to the old way of thinking. And sometimes it's easier to replace the people than it is to change the thinking.
And that's why so often you see a new business brings a new team, or an acquired business, they bring a new team in to run the business.
Right. And it's a quote from, I think it's Einstein, a problem will not be solved by the same mind that created it.
Yeah.
And sometimes they could be part of the problem. They could be part of the solution. You never know. What do we need to slash? Like, what do we need to cut? And what do we need to master? And again, I will say, for me, I am not a hardcore slash turnaround type leader, coach, facilitator. That's not my preference. I can do it. It's not my favorite. It's not my strong suit. I like to take good companies and optimize and dial them in. Take good companies from good to great. And I know you're similar on that, Brad. But it takes a certain type of person, and that's why people who do turn around, they can create a lot of value. It's just higher risk and can be really, really high reward.
Yeah. Awesome. Very, very good. So what would we do if we bought Twitter? I think we covered that. I think, I think we broadly covered that. Make significant changes, get the economic model right, make sure that the people are in the right place. That's good. That's good.
Yep. I would say, to summarize that, Brad, I would figure out the strategy and the economic model, and then I would go and rebuild the fresh structure, clean slate, and then decide who I was keeping and who I wasn't, based on that.
Yeah.
And then, but I would, you'd have to be willing to go in and be very clinical.
Unfortunately, really quickly in the public eye with enormous amounts of criticism from every single angle.
I feel that takes a lot. Takes a hell of a lot of courage to do that. Awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Good chat. Hope you've enjoyed today's episode 136. If we bought Twitter, things to consider when acquiring a business. My name is Brad Giles. You can find me at evolutionpartners.com.au, and Kevin you can find at lawrenceandco.com. You can find us, if it takes your fancy, on YouTube, where you can see the video version, or of course wherever you find your good podcasts. Please be sure to hit like or subscribe to the podcast to hear us come to you every week. And obviously, Kevin and I both have newsletters every week that comes out. So hope you've enjoyed the episode. Look forward to chatting to you again next week. Take care.
Have a great one.